This video introduces character arrays, or C-strings. What we're going to do is write a program that takes a phone number and outputs only the digits. So we'll remove the hyphen if there's any hyphens, or the parentheses if there are any parentheses. Okay, let's start by playing around with the character arrays a little bit just to get an idea of how these work. So let's create a character and we'll create an array. This one will be our test array. So I'll call it T. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in a 7-digit number. So I only need 7 characters. I'm just going to add in 7 digits. Okay, so at location 0, I'll put in, let's put a 5. And I'm using the single quotes because I'm just putting in a single character. And at location 1, I'll put in another 5. At location index 2, I'll put a 5. At 3, I'll put a 2. At 4, I'll put a 1. At 5, I'll put a 0. And at 6, which is the last character in the array, I'll put a 6. Index location 6. Okay, so we can output T, our test, and take a look at what this looks like. Oh boy, something's wrong. What's wrong here is we do not have a null character. And the null character is very important for C strings because it tells the program where the end of the string is. We're treating this character array like we want it to be a string by adding in these numbers, but we're not telling it when to end. And so what we actually need is one more extra empty space, one extra character, and that character is going to be the null character. That's the backslash, which on a typical Windows keyboard is between the enter and the backspace key. And this null character signifies the end of the C string. Let's compile and run. There we are. We don't get stuff at the end. This is just some garbage from memory. We overlooked, and we're looking into memory space that is not actually inside of our array. We've exceeded memory. That's a really dangerous thing to do. Okay, so we're looking pretty good. Now, what we typed out here in full detail is actually could be written as a string literal with just the parts leaving out the null character. So what I'll do is I'll put in 5552106, and I'm going to remove that code, and we'll have the exact same output. So we can just assign a string literal to a C string, but we have to remember that at the end there's a hidden null character that's added in automatically. We don't add those in. If I were to add this in, what would happen? It's telling me that our array of characters is too long. That's because right here we have 8 characters, and then automatically added in to the end of that is an additional null character, which would make for 9. So we'd actually have to have 9 characters in order for this to compile without errors. So I'm going to change that back to 8 for now, and remove this null character, and then recompile. Okay, so that was a little bit of experimentation, but it was good because now we have a better idea of how C strings work. So let's go ahead and put in what we'd like to do for this program. We're going to have a user number, so they'll enter their number, and I'm going to give them 20 characters to work with. And I'll put in a test phone number. We can start off with the one we had, 2106. This time I'm adding in a hyphen, and let's output that test. It's not a test anymore. This is actually the user number. So let's go ahead and test that user number. First compile, no errors. And there we go. We have the number with the hyphen. What if we went with, if they had a full 1-800 number with the parentheses and all? We compile and execute, and then we have the full number. All right, cool. Now what do we need to do? Now we need to loop through our C string. Alright, so how are we going to do this? Let's do this with a for loop. And I'll need some kind of an index variable. So let's declare I and initialize it to 0. And I will need to be less than what? 20. Let's make a const number for the size of our array. So we'll call this user num length, and we'll use this variable as part of our loop, as well as for the declaration of the character array user num. Okay, so we've got our for loop, and we would like to output each character in our for loop. So we'll do that by accessing one character at a time, and we'll just print that out. Let's take a look. And there we have the 1-800-555-2106, and then we have some blank down here. And these blank lines are because we only have 16 characters, but our array allows for 20, with the other 4 initialized to blank. So we have 4 lines. So how do we get rid of those 4 lines? Well, we know there's a null character at the end of the C string, signifying the end of the C string. So let's check for the null character instead of checking to see if we reach the end of the array. We'll check to see if we've reached the end of the C string. As long as our current character is not the null character, then we have not reached the end of the C string. Okay, let's compile and execute. And there we go, we got rid of those empty spaces at the end. What's next? Next, we only want to output the digits. So how do we output only digits? Well, we can use an if statement. And if the current character is greater than or equal to a 1, and if the current character is less than 9, so replace the 1 with a 9, then we'd like to output that character. So we'll only output the digits in this case. So let's compile and execute, and we got no output. Something's wrong with our if statement. We just added this in, so we know that this is a problem. Let's look at this a little more closely. If the character is greater than or equal to 1, the character 1, and if the character is greater than or equal to 9, no, less than or equal to 9. We want to go between 1 and 9 as the digits we're outputting. Okay, let's compile and execute. Here we've got some of the numbers, but we're missing, it looks like, the zeros. Oh, that's because we're going from 1 to 9, not 0 to 9. That should be an easy fix. Compile and execute. 1-800-555-2106. All right, and just to finalize this program, let's output the digits in one line, and we'll add a new line towards the end of our program so that we have a single line of output from the program. And there it is. And that's how we work with C strings. Thank you.